There we go. Okay, so I am so excited to share this with you. I've been attracted to meditative art for many years. I actually developed my own meditative art form. I'm going to show you that down the road. I think we're doing this in a couple of weeks. It's called Kumomi, and I call it Kumomi because it means cloud gazing, and I'll explain that later. But what this reminded me of, this new art form that has been around for only since 2014. It's called, they actually trademarked it. It's called Neurographica. I'm just going to give you a little background on this person who developed it. He's a Russian psychologist. His name is Pavel Piskrev, and it was in 2014 that he came up with this style of drawing, or it's a meditative art, actually more of a really an art therapy. This is the first one I did. I did this in my art journal. So if you have an art journal, um, that's fine. Anything with kind of a smooth surface, you'll need. I'll explain a little bit the process, but I certainly, there's people who are certified to teach this art form. There are people who do it more like for the art therapy reasons. So please look into that. It's called Neurographica I think it's called Neurographic Art, but that's actually not a trademark. That's an actual term. So what it means is the history is that the neurons, the whole neurography is actually a science with about brain, the neurons and the little cells and all that in the brain. And what you're doing is you're going to draw, and this is one piece that I've started this morning with just my pen. And this is kind of the final result, what happens. And then you can color in however you want or not. I kind of think it's beautiful without it. But the supplies you need is your smooth paper. So I'm just using a piece of paper. It's actually cold press. No, it's hot press watercolor paper. And I also encourage you to find, people are using Sharpies, but the Sharpie gives off a really strong odor. I'm sure you know. If that's all you have, that's fine. But search for something because that's got a nice bullet tip, and that's why it's nice. But the smell for me, I can't handle the smell of the Sharpie. So, but I won't show you how to use it, do it with this, but that's fine. If you have one of these, that's okay. Just something kind of big. This Posca marker, it's a felt tip. Well, it's not a felt tip. I don't know what it is. It's a paint marker. It also has a bullet tip. It's got a nice wide tip. This doesn't have any smell, and it is waterproof when dry. Another one that you could use is like, a black, this is a black ink marker. It's a waterproof marker. Let's see what else I have. A micron, these are great too. This is the biggest one I have. This is the number 8. If you have a thin marker, you can just do thinner lines. That's fine. It's not really about having thick lines. I think the first one, this one here, that I did in my art journal, that's done with this pen. So, a thin line is fine. And we've got someone else coming in. Oh, Denise, we lost her and now she's coming back. Got it. Welcome back, Denise. So now basically this is so just so you know, the thin lines are going to be fine. And then the thick lines are really dramatic. So it's all a matter of what you want to do. But the whole purpose behind this and the reason that this psychologist developed it, there's a whole thing, and there's a lot of different steps, and it's very complicated, but it's probably very helpful for people who need art therapy. But what we're doing is something relaxing. So we're going to do something relaxing. It doesn't require any drawing skills, really. You just have to have a little smoothness, but not even that. You can even draw with your left hand. So what I did is I masked off. You can use either masking tape. I use, and I want to share this, this stuff, 3M micro pour. Oh, we got Melissa coming in. Okay. Micro pour tape. If you know that's been a staple in my little, what do you call it? First aid. It's my first aid tape. I love this stuff. The reason I like it, it's translucent, but it also masks off your paper really well, and it doesn't leave, the color doesn't distract you. If you have masking tape, it's usually a different color. And, oh, we got somebody else coming. Somebody else new. Oh boy. Okay. So I'll say hello. Welcome, Bernadette. Welcome, welcome. Glad you're here. If we just stay on mute for now, everybody stays on mute. This makes it easy. I'm just recording I'll just start this recording and then we'll open it up and say hello after the class or after the demo. So I'm just kind of talking about the surface that you need, which is just you can use an art journal, a piece of paper, just plain old typing paper is fine too. But then if you want a watercolor, it's a little hard. So just the thicker the paper, the better. But if you don't have that, that's fine. I've got the masking tape. That's not necessary, but I did mask off my edges. You don't need that, but if you have it, that's great. Another thing is I have a circle template, but you can also use just things like this, like a jar, lid, different sizes of circles like this, so you can get yourself different sizes. So that's kind of, and you'll just be tracing circles. So this is the basic premise of this. And please, if you want to investigate Neurographica, check it out just by that name, type it in, you're going to find certified instructors and a whole network of information. But this is a very basic kind of just a basic technique without a lot of the detail of why it's done, but let's just do it because it's fun. So I'm going to use what I have is I actually today got these I filled some ink, black ink, and I put it in it's a felt tip marker, and I was able to fill it myself. I also found that I could do it with Sumi ink, and these are really handy so I could put my own inks in it. If you have a water brush, you can do the same thing. You could put ink in that inside this barrel here with a reservoir, and I've got my own marker. Like I said, really anything works. The Sharpie will work too. So, or any fine tip, waterproof or not. If it's not waterproof, we have alternative ways to color it in. First thing is get calm. Here I am blabbering a mile a minute, but get calm and find yourself centered in your position so you're not, leaning, or try to have your 2 feet planted on the ground, facing forward. So you're not, you want to have your posture nice and comfortable. And then the second thing, and then of course the original, they have you work out you think of some problem or think of a challenge, and you will scribble it out in your emotions. We're not going to do that today unless you want to. What we're going to do, you can do it with your left hand, your non-dominant hand, if you want to make yourself more loose and free, or I'm just going to do it with my right hand. It's really a struggle for me to even work with my left. But what you want to do, you want to make some scribbles, and they're very, the only rule of this scribble is that you want it to start off the page and end off the page. And I'm going to just demonstrate real quickly. So I'm going to start off the page, and I'm going to make a scribble. It could be a wavy line. It could be, like this, and I'm going off the page. So it starts and it ends off, okay? So there's my first scribble. I could leave it at that, or I can do some more scribbles, but they need to just, basically you want to do scribbles that start on the page and off the page. So there it goes. And I'm going to do another one here, and I'm going to leave that alone for now. And now, so I've got some scribbles. I kind of looped here, didn't have to loop, but just kind of a scribbly, not a pattern. You're not trying to create a pattern. You're just making some fluid lines and scribbles. Now what I'm going to do is take my circles, and I'm just going to put some circles in there. And I'm just going to place them in a place that just kind of where I can see would make a pleasing. I'm kind of going in between my scribbles here. So I'm going to just lay this down, and I'm going to make a circle. And what's nice about this is having a nice circle. You've got these fluid scribble lines that really aren't, there's no, they're not perfect, but the circles are. So that kind of contains them a little bit. And I just think it looks really beautiful. And I'm going to do a different size circle right in here. I'm going to just take this right here and put a different, I'm not sure that's a different size, but I'm going to make another circle in these inside here. And I'm going to do another size smaller circle right here. And I'm going to take a look at it and decide if this is how many circles, if I want to do more. I might just do another line, another scribble here. But basically, you're just making shapes, scribblies and circles. and really not worrying about, you're not drawing anything in particular. It's very abstract, it's very fluid. I've got 4 circles. I'm going to do a 5th one, maybe this a big one right there. And then I'll explain what we're doing next. So we're just doing some circles. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I might do a 6th one, a little one right down here. So I've got 6 circles, and it doesn't matter what it looks. I'm just doing, maybe I'll do a 7th one. 7 circles sounds good to me, right here. I'm just going very slowly and mindfully. I'm not really thinking of anything like a painting or a drawing or a representation of anything. I'm just making these scribbles. And there's meaning to them in the art therapeutic one, but this one, we're just kind of getting a flow. Now the only rule is, you can see this is kind of similar. I'm going to show you the difference here. This started out very similar. So this is how it started, and this is how it ends. Now so here's what causes, what the most important part of this feature is. When you see a line, and this is where it gets really, it gets very calming actually. When you see a line, and this is going to be hard to, I'm going to do it with a thicker pen, or a thinner one, just so you can see it, so I can illustrate. And I'm going to start, it doesn't matter where I start, but everywhere there's a sharp corner or sharp edge, you want to round that out. So I'm just going to make a curve. I'm just going to show you with this so that this is where the neurons come into place. You make a curve and then you can just color that in. And now I've just rounded out those corners. And I'm going to come over here and I'm rounding out. Basically, I'm going to follow this and just kind of round it out, and then I'll fill it in. But if you have a thicker marker, you don't have to fill it in like that. So I'm going to also round this corner. So just go around the edges of your lines, or every place that there's an intersection that has a sharp edge, you want to round it out. And that's why it looks like neurons. That's kind of where that comes into play, where that word came into play. If you look at neurons, with the microscope, they just join like this, where you have these little network of nerves, and then they connect in these neurons. And that's kind of where that's where that word was coined, or the technique was coined. And there's a whole thing about it. Read about it. It's very interesting. It kind of was a little too much for me, but I love the way the final thing is, and it's so calming. It's always good to play some music if you have it. I didn't really cue up any music for us today, but if you have it, cue it up and then just curve out all of your little areas that have sharp intersections. Like here, there's right in here, up here, in this part, just curving it. I'm going to do this now that I've shown you with this thin pen. I'm going to take my good pen here. Another thing you can do too is thicken the lines that you've already made. So if you started out with a thinner pen, you can actually just go and make your lines thicker, which really I think looks more interesting, the thicker the lines. But if you, like I said, if you don't have a thin pen, that's okay. And I'm just going to have to round these out a little more because this pen is a little harder to get detail with. But that's all right. It makes it more organic. And that's kind of the whole thing. You're really not looking for something really geometric. You want to just make some soft, organic lines, and you'll get into this rhythm, and this flow. You'll feel this like, okay, and I'm going through these, and I'm just going to soften that edge, and you'll feel relaxed, because it is a very relaxing thing to take those sharp edges and soften them with your lines. And just follow what you already did now, because the scribble was probably the scariest part, was the scribble, because you don't know what you're doing. It's like, where is this going, right? But this part is more relaxing because it's very structured in a sense. You're taking care of something. It's very structured. You want to soften all those edges, and you'll see them as you're going through your piece here. And I started with a 6x9 piece. If you go much bigger, it'll take you longer. If you go too small, it might be too constraining. So this is a good size to start with because it doesn't take more than an hour to do the whole thing from start to finish. So I'm just going to go through, and I also like to rotate my work because it just makes it easier. And that's why I put things on a little board. You can put it on a piece of cardboard, whatever you want. I just do that to make my life, I just don't like to twist my arms around. It keeps my sense of my posture better when I'm rotating the work like this. That's something you can do. Sometimes just like have a little cutting board or something in your possession, just to use that to mount your watercolors and or drawings, Zentangles, whatever you're using, mindful doodling. I called this, actually, I'll have to show you my finished pieces. I call these noodles because they kind of remind me of noodles. Neuro doodles, now they're called noodles. I like the name because it's whimsical. It's not too serious. That's what it feels like to me. This for me is not feeling serious. It's feeling really kind of fun. Just following these, I'm just going and rounding these corners out at the intersections of where the lines crossed each other. That's basically the only thing that's what makes this kind of unique. Compared to what I do with the Kumomi, it's a little different. This is a really simple but a very effective way to relax. And according to the Neurographica people, the people who are certified Neurographica teachers and the founder, this also apparently is very good for solving problems and doing some therapeutic kind of work. So that's kind of neat. Be interesting to see where, what to maybe to take a course or something and really see. But to observe this, to do this, even art teachers are doing this with their kids, with their students, because it's such a nice technique and very, very satisfying. And it also helps you with your concentration, your focus. What else? Here, see a little place I left. You can see I need it. You can tell when you're looking, you'll start noticing the edges that are needing that rounding out. Here's one right here. You can see it needs that, so I'll just round it out. And now I can just continue that rounding process and go around all the little lines that I squiggled. And I can thicken. Making thick and thin lines all over the place really helps give it more interest, I think, and it looks more dynamic. So I was able to round that out. And if your piece is more delicate, everyone's different. You're not going to, no two people will repeat the same style because everyone has their own hand, their own style of lines. So, you'll find your own. So I don't feel you have to duplicate what I'm doing at all. Definitely just find a rhythm and enjoy it. And I'm just going to keep turning this around. And I'll finish this while we're together because I think this one took the ones I did before. I kind of tested it out. In an hour, you can get a full one done with this size paper, including the painting part of the fun coloring in of the cells. So I call these the lines. They're neuronoodle lines, and then these little openings inside those lines are the little cells, which in science, that's in our brains, in our nervous system, we have cells, and there's some other names I forget, but nexus or something, I don't know. I have to look it up again. So just rounding out every single little place I see an angle, and I'm just curving it, making a curve. Do that all through, and turning your paper also helps you to find those little curves or those little intersections that you need to round out. Just keep going through your page, and I kept mine purposefully not very complex because I didn't want to spend too much of our time doing this part. But this is the part that's the most relaxing. Of course, The coloring in is also relaxing. And if you wanted to just think about, I mean, for me, just breathing properly, taking those nice deep breaths, or just breathe, kind of notice your breath, kind of like yoga, right? You want to notice your breath, how you're breathing, kind of take some nice deep breaths for yourself, and just let your hand kind of just flow along the paper. And that's why it's really good to have the smooth paper. If you have a rough paper, a hot or cold press watercolor paper or something like that, you're going to have some bumps, and that might make it a little harder to do this, to get this flow going. Here's a nice little part that needs to be softened. You kind of find yourself as if you're driving along this little freeway, this little highway of intersections and on ramps and off ramps. Well, you just kind of drive your car, your brush, or your pen to be. It might be interesting to try this with a brush, but just drive it and just make those turns, nice and smooth turns. And you'll just till everything is all those curves. And you've rounded out and gone through the whole highway here. This little neuro highway with line. Here's a sharp turn I gotta make there, and that's good. And then I just make a sharp turn, but I made that curve. So it's however you do that, just make that softened. And you'll just see this all come together, and then you'll have this beautiful, just on its own, without any coloring in. I think they're really beautiful. If you don't have a permanent marker, and you just have a water-based one, I think it would be really fun to try using some gray washes and just see how that looks. So this is done as far as I think I've got all my little intersections, and I'm just going to double check. I'm going to darken some lines here. Ooh, I found one. I found one that needed rounding. And just kind of go through your piece and see if anything needs to be rounded. Here's a spot right here. And I'll look through. Looks like I've got them all. And if you find one later, that's fine too. I think I got them all. Okay, so now I've got that. That's all done. Next step. I'm hoping if you're at that step, I'm hoping you are. If you're not, keep doing what you're doing, closing in the areas. I see a spot I want to thicken a little bit here. Right there. And maybe not even a black marker. If you had like a permanent sort of a navy blue or a dark purple, that would be really interesting as well. And this needs a little softening right there. Okay, I think I got it. So next step, I'm going to keep it on its little board here, on my little board, and then I see a line here that needs something. I don't know. I just now noticed this is a little guy that I just drew kind of. There we are. Just do it like that. And if you want to widen lines at the ends, it looks kind of neat. Like just kind of widen it. There's a little intersection that need a little bit. There we are. So got everything pretty much. Now the next step, you can use watercolors. If you want to use watercolors, that's great. I've got some watercolor pencils I want to play with, so I'm going to just pull them out. But watercolors work as well. And what I want to do is I'm going to start working in the circles. And this is something that they don't teach, but I think it's going to be, just as an artist, from an art perspective, I'm going to use my circles, my circle shapes, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 circle shapes. I'm going to go with my lightest color. I've got this yellow. I'm going to probably use an orange. Maybe that's it. And I'm just going to take, these are watercolor pencils. If you have just regular watercolor pencils, that's great. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of color the edges only, because I can use my brush to make that color deeper. Of course, in these little small areas, maybe the edges won't work so well. That's one of the circles. And then I'm going to do the same yellow in some of these cells of my second circle. I may just use a couple of the yellow colors here. And you can go slowly, just kind of work around the edge. If you have watercolors, you can do the same, but I'm going to show you the watercolor thing on this next one too. I'll make sure if you have watercolors, I'll show you. I'll just do some watercolors as well so you can see. This is just one of the ways. If you're just doing, let me put a little orange in there too. If you're doing watercolor pencils, here's this way, and then I'll show you the watercolors next. Okay, so I've got a water brush, but if you don't have a water brush, these are handy. You don't have to have one. This one has some green on it already, so I need to brush that off. So now I'm just going to take my brush and I'm going to wet it, and see how it activates the colored pencil to really, it's much more bright. I'm just staying kind of within the lines of my cell here, my circular. Now, if you're just using watercolors, just put the watercolor on the edge and draw it in while it's still wet. Kind of the same idea. I'll show you that. I've got some watercolors here. I'll just grab these real quick and show you. Let me get these done first. One thing at a time, Karen. Here, I've got these nice bright circles. I think the circles, when they're light, kind of helps to define the shapes a little bit more, and then I can start getting some colors going outward. But let's start with our yellows and kind of warm tone, light tones. So here I've got some yellow watercolor. I'll just use my regular brush to show you. If I'm just doing watercolor in the cell, I'm just going to grab this yellow. I'll just take this circle that I made, and I'm going to just go on the outside. I'm just going to fill it in. A little wash, like a nice wet, wash. It looks almost identical to the watercolor pencil, actually. But you kind of want to stay light. Let's not, you don't want to go too dark or too much pigment, because, and you want to keep outside of your line or inside your line a little bit, because it might, if you have any opaque watercolors, they will cover up your line. So we lost somebody here. Who was it? Oh, we lost Denise again. Okay. So I'm just now doing a little, kind of taking the watercolor, and while it's still wet, I'm giving it kind of an edge, just to give it dimension, like that, with the orange, just a little bit of orange. And I did the same thing. What's great about watercolors and watercolor pencils is they do work together, no problem. I could put a little more orange in here just to make it look kind of consistent while it's still wet. Or you can just glaze over it like that. I think those are really pretty. So to make your circles kind of a bright color, if it's not yellow, make it like a pink or something light, a light green. Keep it really pale. And that will make it's actually quicker to go with the watercolors than it is the colored pencils. But you can do both. If you have just markers, that's fine. A marker will be just as effective. You could use crayons even if you wanted to. Really, there's not any limit to what you're coloring with. It just depends on how you want your final piece to look. So I've got these little orbs. My little circles are nice and bright. I'm going to even go a little brighter there. And there's all these circles. I want the same color or same color range. So I'm just going to, instead of coloring the whole circle, because I need to just stay in these cells, these little cells, because of that black line. But if you do go over somehow and you get some color onto your black line, just go over take your black line and reinforce it after it dries with your marker. That works too. Now I'm just going to go with a little pale, slightly paler version here of my yellow. And then I'm going to take that orange color, which I think is a really nice color, and just pop that in just to give it some dimension and different, variation inside those cells. So basically you're making little watercolor washes in these little cells, in these little shapes. And when you start to do the komomi, when we do that in a few weeks, you'll notice it's very similar except it's backwards. We're painting last, when in a komomi we paint first. So that's the difference. And now I can, if I want to blot off and just give a little highlight to my cell here, I can just, this is pretty staining, but I could lighten it up by just taking a tissue to that. And here, I'm going to go in the cell here. And I see I've got an intersection. Oopsie. There's a space here that's definitely sharp. So I'm not going to touch that right now. I'm going to go back to it in a minute when this little watercolor dries, because I see that I did. You'll notice that. You'll go, oh, there's a sharp edge. And you'll want to round it out. So I'm going to go back to that. Once that watercolor in that section is dry, and I'll just throw in a little orange for just to make it prettier or more dimensional. Then we'll start working with other colors, like different, or you can have a theme. You can have them just yellow and greens and blues. I think that'd be fun. But you can use other colors too. So I'm going to go back in here where I'm just going to use my thin pen where I see that I have a edge that I did not round. I'm just going to go and round that out before I fill it in. So it's just funny how it really becomes noticeable when you start to really look at it. So here's my final yellow cell that I need to fill. So those were my circles. So I filled them in, the circles with some bright yellow. And I love that. Oops, I've got one I haven't filled in yet. There it is. So since I did do 7, if you only did 3 circles, you would only have 3 yellow circle areas. There we are. We've got like a nice pale, these look like little tennis balls, don't they? Kind of remind me of that. All right, all done. So now I'm going to start filling in the other cells with color. And that I'm going to start at maybe I'll start at the center. I think that would be a nice way to, we start at the center and then we work our way to the edges. So here, these 2 cells, and I think I'm going to do a green, like a nice kind of a yellow green color in one cell. Just going to do it and see what happens. And there's a sharp edge. I see a sharp edge. Oh no, I need to soften that right there. I see where it needed to be curved. Probably doesn't help to be yakking while you're doing this, but when you're doing this at home and you're just relaxed, you would do this with music and soft music or meditative music, guitar, piano, anything, and you would just enjoy the process and then really kind of concentrate, focus. So I'm going to the edge of my paper. And I'm just going to leave that green color. I like that. Or if you wanted to shade and have a different color, so I'm going to just take the green next to it, and I'm just going to just a different color, just for fun. While it's still wet, I'm just kind of going around the edges with a slightly darker green just to give it that dimension. And I'll give it a little more so you can see it. You can do that with the colored pencils too if you have those. Yeah, now as you can see, it just kind of made it darker. And this cell here, so I'm going to take these 3, I'm just doing them in a variation of greens. I'm not going to do the same green for each one. I want to just do kind of a nice variation. This is more of a blue-green color that I happen to have. Oh, it's pretty dark. Then you can start going as dark as you want or as light. But the thing about the black line, if you have the lighter, brighter colors inside the cells, I think that will be makes it a more interesting finished piece. And this one I could put a little bit of a blue color in there, and like a turquoise. Drop that in. Brush it in, and just let that kind of drizzle in there. And maybe in the corners here, so you can see. So this will dry a little bit lighter. Of course, with watercolors, they dry lighter. And there we go. I'm just gonna leave it like that. And maybe the next one, I'll take a little bit different blues. So it's kind of fun. You can take your palettes and play with the colors. See what you've got. This one is I don't know what this one is. We'll find out when I put it in there. It's a blue. It's a real blue. So I'm going to put more green in there instead. This is a I don't know what that green is. I think this one, just a different type of green. We've got Denise coming back. So we lost her and now she's coming back. Let me let her in. She must be having issues with her computer. Okay. Hi, Denise, you're back. I'm glad you're back. We lost you. I'm glad you're back. So I'm just filling this in with a different green. I'm trying a different approach. Last time I did purples, and you just pick any color you want. You can even use the same color in all the cells if you want, but I'm just trying something. I'm just experimenting. It's fun to see what colors do. So I always have fun kind of playing with them. Now I'm just going to throw a little turquoise in here. You can get really, you don't have to be smooth and perfect. You can be kind of painterly, and like here I've got a lot of drips going on in this one, and I think that's fun. Drips and texture happening. And in here I'm going to do, let's see, I think I'll try, where's another green? I'll have to look at my thing here. I see like a very dull, almost like a gray green. I'll try that one in this one. It's a brown. That's kind of interesting. I never would think to use brown because I sort of shy away from brown, but I'm going to try. This is like a great way to just try colors out and see what they do. There's the brown, and then I'll just put a little green in there just because it's a theme of green. Green and brown going on. Just throw that in just to mix it up a little. If you find you have too much color, always you can just draw it up with your brush. There you go, like that. So I got a little brown thing. That's kind of interesting. I could also do metallics, which, I do have some metallics. This would be fun. Throw in, if you happen to have some metallics, this is beautiful green. Ooh, I found this way, it's like an iridescent color. Takes a little bit longer to get a metallic color to dissolve, but I think that would be really fun to put in here. Oh yeah. So you can just play with all your colors in these little cells, your pencils or your watercolors, whatever you've got. Now I'm just going to let that sit. I think that's going to look fun when it dries because it kind of lightened up that brown. That brown just didn't really work with this, did it? Okay, next. Now I'm going to just try some blue and get the start to move out. I'd like to end with purple somehow, but we'll see. I don't have any reds at all, but maybe I'll just not have red this time. I've got some blue. I'm putting it in this cell here on the outside. I'm just going to let it go on my tape. I hope that my tape doesn't soak. I hope that color doesn't soak through. I haven't tried that yet. I'll put some metallic in that just to see how it works. This is a neat way to test to see how colors react to each other too. If you're just experimenting, what a fun way to do like color swatching. There it is. I've got a little metallic that pushed the blue inward a little, which is fun. And I'll do another blue. Well, I think I want to do a purple after. So let's take a different blue. I think that's a blue. No, that's a black. We don't want that. Here's a nice blue. This is indigo. This is a beautiful indigo color. It's kind of I love this for doing waters. Just going to put it in that cell and bring it all the way around. I'll go back to my colored pencils just to show you a little more techniques with that. Because if you don't have, watercolor pencils are fun. If you have just regular colored pencils, you could do that too. Just be more blending you'd have to do, but it's certainly doable. There we go. We've got this little corner here. I'll show you with my colored pencils. So I'm going to just do a little purple. So with the colored pencil, I can take my pencil and just go along the edge of along that edge, and I'll just take a brush and just blend it out. Like that. And that colored pencil seemed to really took a lot to blend that colored pencil. And that does say it's a water soluble. Interesting. So all types of media that you're using, you're going to see different effects. Here's a purple I'm going to try. I'm just going to go along the edge only. I have to actually turn it around because I'm going to touch the, there we go. I'll end up putting my wrist on the other wet paint there. I'm just going to color it around the edge first in the most concentration, all the way, following that curve of that line. And just do it like this. And I might throw in another color just to see. Let's see, this is a more of a blue color. I'm going to put that also in there and see what happens. So you can do this with colored pencils too, without water. I think markers would be the most easy, but it wouldn't be as, your finished piece would be more not as fluid looking. So here I've got my, this is really, whoa. It's, so you can see how each medium is going to behave differently. And this has some graininess to it, which I think is fun. That's interesting. Oh, let me get you muted there. There we go. So, see, like the colored pencil effect is depending on the brand, because the one I did before, I'll show you, it was really smooth. This is more rough, and that's just because of the brand that I'm using. Interesting. And I'm actually using a very expensive brand right now. And the one that I used yesterday came out really nice. And I think it's much smoother. So the finished piece, there it is. That was with colored pencils only. Wow. So just depends on what you're, the brand, and you have to just try different things. Just get those color, and you can keep it as watercolory or as, what's the word? It looks fine because we've got these smooth lines. So I'm going to try that same color. This is more of a burgundy color. It's not quite a red. I'm going to try to keep reds out of this just today, just to see. But you can keep very nice reds, jewel tones, but you want it to be dark or something different than your yellow that you did before. And I'm noticing this is a large cell here. I've got, just going to go along that curve of that line, which is going to go all the way to the edge of the page, which kind of I think will be interesting. Well, I'm going to throw in the red after all. So here's some red. Just see how, just coloring it in. I'm going to actually be really aggressive on this one, just to show you how different things will look different. It will be way different. So I'm going to use just a regular brush, get all that green out that I had in there. And now I'll just activate this color. And it's pretty intense. Wow. So all the colors are just different. I like that. I like the red next to the, so I'll probably put some red over here on this side to join, just to sort of tie it all together. And it's almost finished. This whole thing is just about done. And we are at 10 minutes till noon. So yes, the size is the size to do if you want to do something in an hour. You can take longer though, and I'll show you the next step. This is something that's not done in the, this is just a part I like to do, is a little more doodling over this, which will give you a completely more, just a different look, and I'll show you that next. All right, so I got my little red color in there, nice and red. So I think I'll bring that red. I see that I need to bring this red over here. Hopefully we can do that, and just, that has that purple, but hopefully that red, there we go, tie it in. And I'll just take the same red and bring it over here. There's an edge that wasn't, there's a sharp edge. Oh no, I gotta soften that edge. Round that edge out right there. And I'm gonna just take that red. I like this red. I like that burgundy color too. Just kind of fill it in. Let's see, where's that burgundy? I've got another red. I'll try this one too. This is more pinky red. And then a little bit of that burgundy. So you can just layer and layer with these colors. And then I'll just activate it with my brush. Yummy. That's fun. I've got those 3 little reds to balance it out. I thought it would be important to have red. What I might do too, because this yellow is just, it needs to be more, there needs to be more red. So I'm going to just put some red over this yellow, and red over yellow is going to come out really nice and bright. Let's see how that will look. Oh yeah, needed that. There we go. So now I've got some more red to balance out things. And I think this needs a blue and maybe some red on the outside. So I'll finish the red while I have it in my hand, and then I'll go to the blue in a moment. Maybe some red orange would be nice too. You can also do this with your watercolors. Mix them together. And I'll just take some bright, this beautiful orange color here. I don't even know what color that is, but it's a beautiful, intense orange. And I'll just pop that in. There we go. Now, as I'm looking at my piece, I'm going to do one more thing of red. Just going to bring it in, but it's not going to be as dark or as intense. More of a peachy color. It's kind of good to vary your tones a little bit. There, I've got it much more intense there on the edge. And then the last, maybe a little pink, just for fun. Adding a little pink to that very edge. Maybe I'll throw in that pink on this as well. Right in here, it needs it. Needs something nice and bright right out here. So the painting is just about done, or the piece is just about done for me, and I'm hoping we'll see how yours is doing in a moment. And I will show you the last step, and this is something you can take your time on, after we're done today. There we go, that nice bright color. Just thought it would look good to just get that final, there we go, like this. Okay, this little last white piece, what does that need to be? I think that needs to be blue. That needs to be a really pretty blue. So, whoa, that's a bright one. That's all right. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And then it's finished. The actual neuro drawing or the neural painting, neuro art, whatever it's called, it's now done. But we can now do something else on top of that. All of our lines should be dry. All of our, the black areas, those should be dry. Everything's filled in. So what I do is to finish it, or just to make it kind of a different, more interesting finished look. I'll show you the 2 things that I did. One of them, I did some pattern drawing. On the right, you can see the patterns, just some like lines that I put in, and like sort of Zen tangle type patterns. And this one had just where I did it, some bright white dots within the neuro intersections. And I'm going to show you this because this I think is just really fun, and it kind of finalizes it and gives it a really nice graphical look. I can do it to this one too because it kind of needs it. In fact, I will, because this one's still wet. So I'm going to just put that one aside. I'm going to show you this one. So what I do is I'm going to start by each. Of course, it's really good when you're working with a pen, especially a pump pen. Just especially if you're going to make dots, just test it on a piece of paper to make sure it's not going to make a big blob. So I'm just going to take it, and I'm right in each intersection. I'm making a large dot. Now, if you wanted to also just have little dotting tools, it's kind of not really that circular. I'm going to go in the large ones. I'm making kind of a large circle or dot. And this one I have to kind of do it by hand because if I press it, it'd just be a big blob. Right at each intersection that has a large area of black, just going to go in with the larger dots. each one. And this is going to just create a whole new sparkly, it can be metallic color, it could be white, but white really helps to make this whole thing pop. And then once you get into smaller intersections, just make your dots a little smaller. So you can see I'll just go a little smaller when I see that I have that opportunity to. This is a pretty fast actually process. There's a little bigger, and I'm just going to go a little smaller as I kind of go down the highway here, the neuro highway. And just maybe put some here, not too many, but just, kind of sparkle it up a little bit. Here I've got here, here, and here. I see these little places that need those little sparkle dots. Very busy highway, but boy, it starts to change it changes the look of it so much, but by adding these white, bright little highlights. You just kind of move across your page and make your dots. And I think that really finishes it off. So that's just one way. If you have paint, you can take just acrylic paint and dip it into the end of a brush or a dot, something that you can create dots with. And wow, it changes it, the whole thing. And I see a little place where I have a sharp turn here. I'll fix that later. There I do. So there you go. You can see how it really changes it up to have those little white sparkly highlights that really just completely changes it. Now, just so I'll take off the tape on this one. This one's nearly done, and I'll do the dots in a minute, but I'm just going to remove my tape, and you'll see now my tape, I can see that the paint went through that a little bit, so, that's all right, I can just trim it. It kind of did go through, so I'm going to have to say that depending on how much, it's not bad, but the micropore tape doesn't necessarily keep your, it doesn't work as a masking tape so great. It works okay, just not perfectly. That's all right. I like it because it's very gentle on the paper. It doesn't remove any of but you see it did go through. So I will have to trim that with a paper cutter if I don't want those edges like that. But there it is. There's our little drawing, and I want to see what you've done.